Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Lance Dietz of KB Partners. Lance, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hall. Glad to be here.
So can you tell us about your background before you got involved in early stage investing?
Yeah, sure. I'll take you back to my childhood. I grew up kind of in central Illinois, a town called Morton, right near the Peoria area, and was into sports my whole life. Played everything from junior football to golf to basketball, and basketball was kind of my first love. Wanted to be a 6'5" point guard. Unfortunately, I only made it to 5'11", but nonetheless, played quite a bit in high school and actually ended up going to West Point, the military academy, to play basketball. So I went there. I played for a few years, unfortunately got hurt and kind of moved on from that, but studied economics at West Point. And then in 2008, when I graduated, went into the military as is common, commissioned as an engineer officer, and spent the next 5 years in the Army here in the States for a few years, in Germany, and as well as in Afghanistan on a combat deployment. And then after that, got married and moved back to a bit closer to home. We moved to the Chicago area, really to be back closer to family. And so as a way to transition from the military, I decided to go to grad school and got my MBA at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And then immediately after that, in 2015, joined kind of the finance world here in Chicago with JP Morgan in their investment bank. But since being in high school and in college, I had always wanted to get to the investment side of the house. I had a lot of mentors and friends that had done it. And I felt, to be honest, that kind of the background or the career up to the point of JP Morgan, kind of the management and leadership experience from the Army to the finance experience from Chicago Booth in JP Morgan, would just be a great skill set to move into kind of the investment side of the house, and love the idea of going to the early stage venture side, just because I think you can get a bit more involved with companies, be a bit more valuable. And to be frank, I thought the industry is just kind of this wave of tech was really, really compelling to me. And so about 3 years into JP Morgan, I started to spend some time looking at opportunities on the investment side of the house and came across KB Partners that was looking to raise a fund focused on this intersection of sports and technology, which we can get into a bit later. But I met the team and quickly realized this is just such a great alignment of my background with sports and with health and fitness, as well as the finance side and the management side. So I want to say after a week or two of spending time with the founder, Keith Bank, and my other colleague, Steve Ahern, quickly realized it'd be a great opportunity to build something from scratch along the lines of stuff that I was super passionate about. So that's kind of how I got to KB Partners and kind of early stage investing.
So KB Partners focuses on sports and technology, or the intersection thereof. Can you tell us how they started investing in that sector?
Yeah, sure. So I'd have to credit it to the founder, Keith, a longtime investor. He's a former entrepreneur himself. Has been doing the early stage investment thing for about 23 years now. More traditionally, kind of as an angel investor, had a few additional funds, more traditional venture funds early in his career. But like myself, has always been passionate sports fan, grew up playing sports. In about the last 8 or so years, alongside his traditional investments, started to look at and invest in just kind of like sports related companies or sports tech related companies, sort of from a passion project, and had some really good successes, built up a phenomenal track record in the space, built up a really broad and deep network of players in the space, people that he could call on, and just recognized recently, that it's a gigantic market that is really being transformed by tech. And there aren't a ton of sophisticated investors that are willing to play in the space, especially at the early stage. I mean, I think it takes a lot of things to be successful there. And you just haven't seen as many traditional funds spending a lot of time there. You're starting to see a few more of them now as people get wind that this space is really interesting. But he decided to go out and raise a fund to take a more active portfolio approach with a focus on the intersection of sports and technology. And so I joined him just as the fund was getting started and we built out a team to go after it. So we focused on a handful of different areas under this broad umbrella of sports tech. And if I were to lump them into 4 or 5 verticals, one would be kind of the more traditional health and wellness / digital fitness. So really anything from the Pelotons of the world to a portfolio company that we have called the Sensei to the Fitbits. Another vertical would be kind of immersive media as it relates to sports. So anything from AR, VR, streaming, different ways to experience fan engagement, those types of applications. Another vertical kind of dubbed the smart venue vertical, or kind of applications where the first use case may be in a sports venue. So anything from new ways for ticketing, security, crowding analytics, that then have broader applications to smart buildings or smart cities. And then we also look at things that kind of fall a little bit outside of the traditional sports mantra, maybe are a derivative of sports, kind of the esports world, sports betting that's gotten really popular as of late, fantasy, et cetera. So those are probably the main categories that we tend to lump a lot of the things we see into. And we also look, youth sports is kind of cuts across all of this, or all those categories, and is a growing and fragmented space that we also spend some time in.
So we have quite a few investors that listen to the show, and we always ask for your advice for people that wanting to invest in startups. What would you advise those investors who may want to invest in the sports technology sector?
Yeah, I guess find a good fund manager that's been doing it for a while, and go with them. But outside of that, I think a lot of things kind of across traditional venture investing apply. I think there are a handful of nuances more specifically to kind of the sports tech world, especially when you're dealing with sports teams, elite performance athletes, where a lot of technologies start and then kind of expand from, that maybe are a little bit more industry specific. So I think it takes a lot of time in the industry, speaking with different players, to really get a sense of the nuances associated with how companies in this space go to market, what challenges they face, what kind of the real true user demand is for certain things, and how quickly you can get to that. So I think my first piece of advice is you really want to spend a ton of time in the space, not just with startups, but with kind of the legacy incumbents and the different types of players that are going to have a say in kind of how successful a company is. The other thing that I would say as well, and this goes into kind of like how we think about startups that we look at, is really understanding why a particular team is going to be successful in something that they're pursuing. And so we spend a lot of time there, and I can get into that a bit later as well. But I'd say those are the two things. Is you really need to understand the fundamental dynamics of the ecosystem, and that just takes time, a network, and insight from players that have been here.
Great. So how is the industry evolving here? There's a lot of new things happening with esports and then the gaming laws, and there's just a lot of different things going on. But how do you see your sector evolving going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that we spend a lot of time on. To be honest, we learn a lot from the entrepreneurs that we talk with. I think you hit on one thing that's really interesting, is kind of sports betting and kind of how that's going to impact the landscape. And of course, I think everyone is aware of that. I think where we like to spend time is in technologies and in companies and teams that are pursuing approaches that make it easier for enterprises to offer sports betting solutions. I think you see a lot of companies or startups trying to go straight from B2C, really targeting the end user. But as you probably know, it's a very challenging space from the regulatory side. It's cost prohibitive. So we're spending time with teams that kind of have a deep knowledge within the space, have been in the industry in sports betting, and are actively pursuing opportunities kind of on the enterprise side. I think taking a whole different, cutting across our verticals, I think this immersive media wave, or just technologies that really enable the fan experience, is really being transformed. It's really kind of incredible. Fans have an unlimited opportunity to engage with sports content, with sports personalities. Teams and leagues are trying to find ways to keep people more engaged, to grow the audience. And And to be honest, kind of the millennials that grew up around sports prior to this wave are now in their 18 to 30, 35 are now having households teaching kind of their kids like how to view, play, and engage with sports. So I think you're going to see in this new era kind of how technologies really enable and impact the fan engagement experience from playing to attending to watching, kind of all aspects of sports across all forms of media.
Well, great. Well, you talked about looking for a team and why they'd be successful, but beyond the team, what is your investment thesis for this sector? What specifically are you looking for in startups to say, yeah, that's for us, or no, that's not?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're kind of, just to give you the background, we're focused on a spectrum from seed to Series A. We're typically looking to write checks of 1 to 3 million, kind of as an initial check size, into a seed deal or a Series A deal. And we have some flexibility kind of to go up and down from there, depending on the opportunity. We generally are looking for startups that have the core team in place, have a hardened product or service that has allowed them to go out and really get a little bit of traction, which may just be there's pilots going, there's some initial customers, but at least have an idea of how things are shaking down, have a good view on kind of like customer demand, what users want, and have done a good job of getting that point in a capital efficient way. So I think broadly, that's how we think about things that fall within our sweet spot. And then from there, we start to dive in. And I think kind of at this early stage, we do spend a lot of time and focus a lot on the founding team, just because, to be honest, like they may have a great vision, but it's very likely that in a year or two, that vision switches or changes and they have to iterate, the market moves. And so we like to see founding teams that have an intimate sort of experience with what they're trying to solve in the sports world itself. And a lot of times that comes from someone who worked in the space or was an athlete themselves or worked in sports media. Like, I think just given the dynamics associated around the industry makes it really important for that team to have institutional knowledge that an outsider likely doesn't have, or relationships that only come from spending time in the industry. So I think that's one thing around the team that we really look for. I think other aspects that I've kind of been part of our thesis and just trends that we've looked at is really kind of use cases that have a great application to sports and maybe start out in sports as the first use case, but are really applicable to things outside of sports. So we have a couple portfolio companies where that is the case. And we just find that that's a great opportunity to see how something can scale to be much larger than just a sports application or a health and wellness application. I think the other thing that we look for is kind of, since we're focused on a niche vertical, we tend to want to make sure that whatever we're investing in, there's definitely opportunity for us to be helpful. So we've assembled kind of an advisory board of about 8 individuals and 2 venture partners that run the gamut from the former CEO of Topgolf to current senior exec at Sport Radar to execs at sports talent and media agencies. And we want to make sure that there's opportunity for us to kind of plug those guys in any way that the founder or startup team needs to help accelerate kind of what they're trying to do. And so that's another aspect that I think is probably unique to us in some ways, but that's really another criteria that we look for.
So my next question is, what startups fit that thesis? And do you have 1 or 2 portfolios you could describe a little bit more detail about what they did and why that was a great fit for your fund?
Yeah, for sure. One that comes to mind was our second or third investment. It's a company called the Sensei, based in San Francisco. It's an AI-enabled remote coaching platform that essentially takes input from smart apparel or computer vision application, and through the recognition technology, allows them to in real time see what an athlete is doing and correct them with verbal feedback, audio feedback, correct a particular action or movement or training exercise in real time, and then monitor the athlete's progression for that particular workout, and then also kind of over time. So the phrases that we like to say is kind of like a sensei can see what a coach sees, say what a coach says, and then teach what a coach teaches. So this idea of it knows what right looks like, and then is able to give feedback, something beyond just, hey, you've done 10 steps now, do 2 more, or rotate your knee 6 degrees, but rather what a coach would actually say to you if you're doing something wrong, to get you to kind of get in that mindset again. And then is able to produce programs that uses that feedback and how you're progressing over, not just in that particular workout, but over a longer period of time. So it's a really interesting technology. The first use case is sports. They've started out soft launch in rowing, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of opportunity to take this to physical rehab or the medical industry, or even to an industrial working application where you need to monitor different types of movements in certain scenarios, such as an industrial warehouse or something like that, for users that are doing things that are a bit prescriptive, but could also be dangerous at the same time. And you'd want to monitor those. So that's an example. Kind of on the team side, what we loved about the team is that they were former coaches themselves. So they were very intimately aware of kind of this problem and how to kind of leverage it in a scalable manner, and are able to train the technology and kind of how a coach would actually coach an athlete. Additionally, they're former entrepreneurs and technologists that have also developed a great business sense and acumen. So that's something that check the box on the use case, check the box on kind of the founding team. And then they were right in our wheelhouse from an investment side and stage. So that's one that we really liked, and we made an investment in last August.
So what are the challenges in this space? What do you see as a risk that you have to mitigate to be successful at investing in the sports technology space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you're starting to see this space just get incredibly popular right now. There are a handful of funds that are starting to pop up. I think most of those are maybe a stage later than we are. And everyone is trying to find ways to kind of leverage technology here. So from teams to leagues to fans to corporates. And so one piece of it is that things are starting to get a little bit more expensive. So from the investor side of the house, like, I think you have to be intimately aware of other competitors out there, kind of what the differences are between applications or startups, so that you have a sense of when it makes sense to pay a little bit more, or how to actually value kind of an opportunity. I think, especially on the sports betting side and the esports side, I mean, these spaces are growing incredibly fast, tons of engagement, and everyone is trying to develop some sort of startup or application to capitalize on these growing markets. And I think unless you have a network in the space or have an expertise in that space, it's really hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. So I think, thankfully, like we've had the opportunity to invest alongside some really, really smart investors in these spaces. We've built out our networks there, people in the space that can be helpful, and kind of spent a lot of time around it to try to figure out where it really makes sense to spend our time and effort from the investment side. But I think just given the growing nature of the impact of technology on sports and how easy it is to start a company nowadays, I think you're going to see more and more opportunities pop up. And unless you have strong focus, a narrow focus, and kind of the expertise or network to filter through all that, I think it gets really challenging. So that's something that we just continue to build. I mean, I think we do have a great network, but we also spend a lot of time with founders that may or may not be ready for investment or may not fit into our sweet spot just yet, really to get smart, because I think founders and founding teams that are spending day in and day out in these industries are really a great source of learning, a great source of education, and where to really kind of spend time. And we try to do as much as we can to be helpful prior to investing as well. So
great. Well, we appreciate that rundown of the sports technology sector. In the last few minutes that we have, what else should we cover that we haven't?
No, I think we hit on it all. I mean, we're always open to meeting with people that are interested in the space, doing something in the space, and we're pretty down to earth and typically get back to everyone. So more than happy to connect with people that are wanting to learn more, that are doing something in and around sports and technology, or just have questions regarding what we're doing as well.
How best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. Website is great. There's an opportunity to submit business plans or questions or just reach out. My work email, that's a great way to get a hold of me, is lance@kbpartners.com. And then I'm active on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So please connect with me and the firm there as well.
Well, great. We'll put those in the show notes and look forward to having you back for a follow-up soon, and appreciate your taking time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hal. I really appreciate it. It was great.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.